On this episode of Off the Beaten Path, we travel to Scranton to visit a place dedicated to Harry Houdini. Chris and his camera take a tour of the Baker Mansion. We talk with a great local musician on a new segment called Pennsylvania Music Showcase, and sample a great beer brewed right in our own state. Pennsylvania is filled with interesting things. You just need to know where to look. Come with us right now as we go off the beaten path. Welcome everyone to another episode of Off the Beaten Path, the program that showcases interesting people, places, and things all across this great state of Pennsylvania. Now, before we get started on the first episode of the sixth season, I want to say thank you. Thank you to everyone watching. Thank you to everyone that emailed. Thank you to everyone that never gave up hope when we took our very, very long hiatus. But we're back now, and we're going to get started. And our first stop in this episode is going to be in Scranton at the Harry Houdini Museum. And I picked up a little trick while I was there. Watch. Oh, wait. It goes like this. Ah, there it is. The Houdini Museum, located in Scranton, is dedicated to the great Harry Houdini, the world-famous magician and escape artist. It is nestled inside a historic 100-year-old building, and I've been told it's the only building in the world dedicated to Houdini. This museum covers Houdini's entire career, from props he used in his act to posters, newspaper articles. Everything and anything that has to do with the master magician is here.
There are so many things to see here. We have everything from little personal postcards to pictures, props, posters, actual props. We have the milk can escape. We have a replica of the Chinese water torture cell. The original one was burned at a fire up in Canada, but we have a replica. We have the beer challenge, we have the packing crate, we have the metamorphosis trunk. It's amazing how many things we have here for people to see. When people come in, the kids go, wow, look at this. But then the adults behind them are like, this is really cool. This is way better than I thought it would be.
Harry Houdini was born in Budapest, Austria-Hungary on March 24th, 1874. And soon after his birth, his family immigrated to the United States and settled in Appleton, Wisconsin. So why did this museum end up in Scranton? According to the curators, Houdini was quite fond of the city.
Well, we needed a place that had vaudeville history, which Scranton had. We needed a place Houdini appeared at. We needed a place that has an international airport. So this has all of that, and also it's a quick trip into New York. So we do a lot of shows in New York also. So it's also we have relatives in Pennsylvania. My father came to Pennsylvania from the old country. We get people from France, Germany, there's people from Russia right out there now. We get people from all over the world.
Well, Houdini loved Scranton. This was one of his favorite towns. It was a tough crowd. I don't know if you know this, but there was a saying that they'd say, oh yeah, well you think you're good? Play Scranton. And then they'd also say, if you can play Scranton, you can play anywhere. It was a testing ground before you could go to New York City for the big theaters. And so this was common. Well, Houdini did a couple of challenges here. This was a tough crowd, and they came up with the best. There was the J.B. Woolsey employees put Houdini in a packing crate, made it out of 2-inch wood, nailed him in with 7 pounds of nails. He got out in 6 minutes, which was less time than it took him to put him in there. The Standard Brewery folks put him in a barrel of true age beer, and he got out of that one. There's no sign of how he got out of any of the things. That was the mystery. How in the world did he do it? How did he get out of it? And he had actually a $1,000 prize to anyone who could lock him in anything that he couldn't get out of, and you could take home 1,000 smackers. There was an envelope manufacturing company made a giant envelope. The Department of Naval put him in a sea bag. The suffragettes wrapped him in wet sheets and tied him to a cot, and he got out. He actually later said that that was the toughest thing that he'd ever done, one of the toughest challenges that he'd ever taken. And then of course here in Scranton, the beer challenge, and he also did, as he traveled, there were dairy companies everywhere. Most communities had their own dairy farm. And Houdini had this great challenge that anybody could do. A dairy company could challenge him to go into a giant can of milk.
Not only is there a guided tour, but there's a live magic show too. The live show at the museum is hosted by the owners, who are world-renowned magicians themselves.
Yeah, we make it so that it's a full event, so that you see everything in magic and learn everything in magic. In fact, we've had people from museums come here around the country. I'm talking about big, expensive museums. They said this is what a museum should be, a real, full, rounded experience, and that's what we do.
We really have an amazing time during the show. There's doves, a duck, a rabbit, 2 poodles magically appear, and at the end of the show we levitate an audience member in the air past the hoop and float them back down. And so it's super fun. It's about 2.5 hours to 3 hours experience here, and the whole thing is designed as an entertainment event. And it's designed to be continuous. So when we open at 1, we start with the film and then it continues. Then there's the tour, then the magic show.
After spending time with Dorothy and Bravo the Great and checking out all the interesting artifacts at the museum, it was easy to see why one would spend so much time gathering and preserving the life and history of such an iconic person. But I still needed to ask, why dedicate your life to magic and the history of Houdini?
I didn't have any kind of real direction in my life. I grew up with, it was a poor family. I had 6 brothers and 2 sisters, and my brothers they never let me play because I was a very girly girl, and I couldn't catch a ball, so I couldn't play baseball. I couldn't play any of the typical games that kids play, but they would let me play cowboys and Indians and cops and robbers because they could tie me up, and it would be really cool, you know. And I didn't mind. I thought that's how kids play. I didn't think anything was odd about it, and I would always escape, so it was no big deal for me. So then one day my aunt says to me, "Hey, who do you think you are, Houdini?" And I said, "Who's that?" She said, "Look it up." So I looked it up and I read the first book about Houdini, and I was just totally, I was hooked. I wanted to be Houdini. I wanted to be just like him. And when you read more and more about Houdini, he wasn't just a performer. He was a really great guy. He gave back to the community. When life was good to him, he gave back. He did lots of charity work. He also, when he was traveling, if he found somebody, a performer that was down and out, which that can happen, you know, he would not only give them money to help them out at the moment, but he would actually set up a trust fund so that that person was taken care of. And so he was that kind of a guy. Houdini is an inspiration to anyone. He represents the impossible, doing the impossible. And the greatest thing is that I tell kids all the time, my favorite autograph of Houdini's, he says, "My brain is the key that sets me free." You would think that a magician would have a clever, magical kind of a saying, but he says, "My brain is the key that sets me free." And he really was brilliant. He wasn't just a magician or an escape artist. He was an author. He wrote books, he wrote films, and when the movie companies were not giving him all the money that he felt was due him, he started his own movie company, the Houdini Picture Corporation, and nothing ever slowed him down.
Their dedication to preserving the history of Houdini continues even today. Recently, Dorothy and Bravo the Great took it upon themselves to make sure Houdini's bust at his gravesite was restored after it was vandalized over 40 years ago.
We replaced his bust at the Society of American Magicians, which makes millions of dollars off of Houdini's work. They wouldn't replace it. The money we take in, we funnel that toward that project. They didn't do it, so we said, somebody's got to do it, and we decided we would do it.
If you'd like to check out the Houdini Museum, visit Houdini.net or Houdini.org. And if you take the tour, tell them Off the Beaten Path sent you. Coming up next on Off the Beaten Path, sampling a great Pennsylvania beer.